Hello, thank you for joining us today. Happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. My name is Mercedes Navarro, and I am a Family Learning Center coordinator with the San Jose Public Library. Today, we have the opportunity to celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month by viewing a cooking demonstration made by community member Jaime Cardenas. Jaime will not only teach us how to make this delicious dish that is near and dear to her heart from her Ilocano heritage, but we will also get to hear about how this dish keeps her connected to her ancestors. We want to give thanks to Jaime for sharing her story with our San Jose Public Library community, and I hope you enjoy this cooking demonstration as much as I did.
Hello, my name is Enrique Cardenas. I am the heart and hands and owner and founder of Magpie Alchemy, an urban apothecary here in Sacramento, California, also known as Unceded Nisenan territory. I'm also the daughter of Jaime Galinato Cardenas and Angelita Pesquiza Cardenas. I'm the granddaughter of Victorina, Borje Pesquiza, and Evaristo Pesquiza, and granddaughter of Maria Asuncion Galinato Cardenas and Enrique Cardenas. This recipe that I'm going to share with you today is an Ilocano dish. It is a recipe that's so near and dear to my heart. It was typically a dish that was made towards the end of the year on special occasions like New Year's or Christmas, or any other time my family had the opportunity to gather either here in Sacramento or in the Kingdom of Hawaii. Another reason why this dish is so special is because my grandfather, Papa Ricky, who immigrated here by way of Hawaii as a farmer, he actually gave a demonstration at Leeward Community College in Pearl City, Hawaii. So it's kind of like me carrying on his legacy and also sharing a little peek into our migration story, which is so important to be included in the fabric of who we are in America, and especially for Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So I will cover some basics with you guys. I'll go over some of the ingredients, and also really what I wanted to share is how simple and easy this dish is. It's a foundation that you can create for, if you want to make your own twist with it or add certain things that that you think would be tasty with it. But also, I just really had to share that my need for connecting with this dish was so great that the recipe that I'm going to share with you today is something that I found through memory. The recipe was not shared, unfortunately, by my grandparents. So when I was living in Maryland, I really missed it, and I basically kind of played like a spy, or maybe you want to say even reverse engineer, but just by memory and nostalgia did I kind of crack the recipe. So we'll go over the basics of how to make a noodle, which in this recipe we're making egg noodles, and then the sabaw, or the soup that goes with the dish. And it's so delicious, it's so comforting, it's nourishing, it can feed your entire family. And for me, it has always been just this big, huge hug from my ancestors, both in this realm and beyond. So let's get started. So before we start with the recipe, I just really wanted to share with you all photos of my ancestors who I'm drawing inspiration from today. I speak their names to honor them and also to remember them. This photo is of my Gramps, as I lovingly called him, or Evaristo Pesquiza. This is my mom's dad, And then this is a photo of my dad's parents, Maria Asuncion Galinato Cardenas, and then Enrique Cardenas. My papa Ricky is the one who held the Mickey demonstration at Leeward Community College. And my mama Mary is who I draw inspiration from every day for all the ways in which she held us, helped community, and also taught us about the power of plant medicine. So let's get started. So I have the dough ball here, and I just wanted to show you guys how simple it is. This can be done, in advance. And, you could need this in, your KitchenAid or your stand mixer with the dough attachment, or, kind of do what I do, which is take out my frustrations and my grief on the dough and kind of use the movement and the motion as medicine to get, my wiggles and anger and grief out. What I'm doing now is I'm actually just breaking it down into smaller portions so that I can roll it out into little pancakes, and then that's basically the foundation of making noodles and making little dough balls. My gramps, used to spend a significant amount of time making this dough. I have fond memories of him really just putting all this tenderness and care into the process. He would make tons of this dough at one time. Then he would kind of take over our dining room and dining room table and dry out the noodles. Now you can dry out the noodles. I've discovered since it's a fresh noodle, you don't necessarily have to do that. If you feel that part is important, you could actually use a dehydrator, or I have a magic device called the air fryer that has a dehydrator function to it that I'm actually gonna do to kind of speed up the process. I kind of feel as if the air fryer is like my generation's cool gadget, like everyone my age has an air fryer. And I'm breaking these down into just maybe about a palm size dough ball, and this is just going to make it easier for when I take out my rolling pin and roll it into sheets. From there you can then layer it and then cut it, which I feel as if that's like the most satisfying part of the process, is cutting the noodles, because it's so fun. So I'm just, what I ended up doing, if you don't have the space, I have a kitchen table here that has like ridges in it. So I prepped it by putting down a little bit of parchment, and then now I have a very flat surface where I can start rolling out my dough balls. So with any dough work, you want to make sure that you have maybe the bag or a bowl of the flour nearby so that you can dust off your rolling pin and then dust off your dough, because you don't want anything to stick. So I like to have a table that's a little bit lower, just so I can really use my body to provide some leverage, and I'm not straining my body too much. And from memory of what my gramps used to do, is he used to just take these dough balls and make long discs of dough. And there's kind of a debate, you know, I made this dish just with so much pride for my family, and there's a debate going on, like, okay, the noodles should be thinner, the noodles should not be, you know, they just need to be a certain consistency. But I just have this memory of them being these like thin in, you know, thin style noodles, but were a little bit wider. But like, you know, my dad, for example, was like, they need to be thinner in size. No, not for my memory. My memory says that they need to be wider. Okay, so like I have one patty here, rolled pretty thin. I don't want to be too technical, because, you know, this is something that I just really want you all to enjoy. And, you know, yeah, I could give you the noodle needs to be like 1/8 of an inch thick. You know, you decide if you want it to be thicker, cool, but I think a happy medium is fine. And as you can see, you know, I'm doing very similar in size sheets of noodle, because the idea is that once I have everything rolled out, I can stack them and then roll it up like this. And then I can cut everything all in one fell swoop. And it is just so satisfying. Do one more. So as you can see, the surface is now kind of soaked up all the flour. So I'm gonna add a little bit more. And then I'm not gonna strain too much. So, you know, I had that rolled to one side. I'm gonna turn it. And just to kind of give you guys a little background, you know, as I roll this out, for the kind of flavor base for this dish, it is an Ilocano dish. I actually, in doing some research from it, because in my practice at Magpie Alchemy, I'm also a natural plant dyer. Anything that has plants in it, you know, I feel like I've experimented with it. So, you know, this dish is from the Ilocos region of the Philippines. It's also popular in Abra. Abra is the natural dye capital of the Philippines. So it would make sense that the base of this dish has aswete, or annatto seed, which is a natural colorant that's used for textiles. But also, if you are a fan of cheese, like cheddar, Annatto is also a natural food dye to give you that beautiful yellow color. Alright, I'm gonna finish this up off camera and I will be back with you guys. Okay, so we have rolled everything out into sheets. So we have noodle sheets here, and in between each layer, I also added some flour so that it would not stick. And because of the sheer amount of noodles that we made, I'm gonna make 2 piles. And the reason why I basically doubled the noodle recipe is because, just for tradition's sake, the way my grandpa used to do it is he would make enough noodles so that there's enough for this batch and then enough that you can dry and store or put in the freezer and make for the next batch, so that you don't have to spend you know, another time making a batch of noodles. Do want to just shout out my partner, my husband, my battle buddy. It's so beautiful being able to keep these traditions alive and also teach my family, my husband and my daughter, these recipes too, because it just means so much. Okay, so we have a pile of our noodle sheets, and this is probably the most satisfying part. It is cutting them. So just for ease, what I like to do is roll everything. Everything's nice and floured. And then I have my knife that still has onion on it, but that's okay. And then I like to, or from memory, I remember the noodles being about this wide and this thin. So what is that? Half an inch? My dad will argue that it needs to be thinner, so maybe I'll meet him halfway and we'll do just a little bit smaller. Sharp knife is a major part of making sure the success of your noodles turns out, because if I were to get a dull knife, it would just drag that through and then you're not going to get such beautiful noodles. And that is just how easy it is to make your own egg noodles. And then what you can do is you can just take a little bit of flour and dust that. Now, the way my grandfathers used to do this is, again, they used to dry it, but you know, this is a fresh noodle. So really what that means is it doesn't need as long to cook. There is a sweet spot though, so I'm gonna let you choose your own adventure. You can go ahead and cook it fresh if you feel as if you're skilled enough where it just needs a little bit of heat. You don't want to disturb it too much, just to kind of get that all nice and cooked. Or if you want, and if you have the time, you can dry it. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up and then we can move on to the next step.
So we have everything in the pan now. I seasoned very generously some chicken thighs. And I'm choosing chicken thighs because this can take a little bit more cooking. So if we're stewing things and building the sauce or the soup or the sabaw, as we say, then I don't have to worry about it getting dry. If anything, the fat and the deliciousness that's going to come out of these chicken thighs are going to flavor the sauce. So really what we want is the GBD, Golden Brown Delicious. Golden Brown Delicious is actually a flavor, and that's going to also add to the sauce. So you want to make sure you take your time with that and really get a nice good golden brown crust on there. And then we can add our aromatic shortly. Right, I'm going to finish browning this chicken off camera, and then I'll be right back with you guys.
Okay, so as you can see, I got a little bit more color on there. These are going to continue to cook, so you know I want to at least cook it here, and then I have the delicious golden bits of deliciousness on the bottom of the pan, which as we start to add our aromatics, that's going to start to deflate that and contribute, you know, to the sauce. I think the first thing I'm going to add is the garlic. Just so I can get the, you know, I don't want to burn it. I just want to toast it slightly so that we get that, you know, bite out of it. And it's not too, you know, like raw garlic flavor. You know, the idea behind this dish too, in building the flavors, is it's going to be a balance of everything. You're not, one thing's not going to sing louder than the other. At the end of this dish, because you're going to add some toppings to this too, you know, like perhaps some lemon or green onion, or even some chicharron, which is the crispy skin of the pig. That's you can add on top for some crunch. You know, you want to be mindful of that. That all of this is going to contribute to the final flavor. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to saute this, and just until the onions turn translucent, and then I'm going to add my chicken stock. Another thing I'm going to add are some bay leaves. I'm not sure if my grandparents put bay leaves in their Mickey. I just think that bay leaves add an additional depth of flavor and herbaceousness that, you know, you just can't achieve without it. Let that out for a little bit longer, and we'll continue. Okay, so now it looks pretty good. Everything's nice and soft. Now I'm going to add our liquid, which is going to be the base for the dish, the soup, the sabaw, the sauce. I'm pretty certain that my grandpas both made their own stock. They basically stewed their own whole chicken with water, you know, and skimmed all of the fat and the impurities off the top. This is just a faster way. Feel free to make your own chicken stock. You know, I am a big fan of using your maybe your food waste from a rotisserie that you bought, or you know, you roasted a whole chicken and you now have the carcass. You know, that can totally be used for making a stock. Okay, so I'm gonna let this marry and kind of concentrate and you know, chill out a little bit. Something else I'm also gonna add, which is what I mentioned in the beginning, is this beautiful spice. I can't really describe the flavor. It is called anato. In the Philippines, it's called aswete. I think it's also called achiote. It can be used as a natural dye for fibers, for textiles, for food. This is going to serve as both a dye and a flavor. So I think I have about maybe a tablespoon or so. Because this is pure annatto or achiote, I know I have memories of my grandfather stirring the powdered annatto with water, much like a cornstarch slurry. But this is pure annatto, so it doesn't need that additional step. It's just gonna disperse evenly because there's no cornstarch in it. Okay, and I'm gonna add a little bit more pepper. You know, because this is gonna be the base, this is where we're gonna add those noodles. I wanna make sure this is really nicely seasoned. And then I'm gonna let the chicken stew. I'm gonna come back to this, and then I will add the salt aspect actually even the flavoring of the sauce, which is gonna be a kind of a combination of both patis and bagoong, which are fish seasonings. So the chicken has stewed now for a bit. So now, because it's thighs and I want it to be like bite-sized pieces of chicken, you could take this out and put it on a cutting board and use your fancy knife. But I'm going real Asian style here and getting my Asian kitchen shears and cutting it like this because it's easier and less dishes. So now is the time where you're going to start to really build the dish. I'm going to taste it, and I did add some garlic powder because I felt like it needed it. And then this is where I'm going to taste to see where the salt level is at and how much patis, which is our fish sauce, or bagoong. I never added bagoong to it before, but because this is an Ilocano dish, it most definitely has bagoong in it, because that's basically the basis of every Ilocano dish is bagoong, which is the brown bagoong. It looks like this, as opposed to the pink kind that you use for like kare kare, which is a peanut stew. It's very popular in Filipino cuisine. Okay, taste it. Okay, so I think it definitely needs a little bit more patis. You want to make sure this is really flavorful because, again, you're putting in bland noodles. And then I have some. So a little goes a long way. Then again, I'm also going to adjust this if needed once we add the noodles. This is a good foundation, and now we're going to add the noodles. Okay, so we have this nice and hot. I think it's really balanced. There's a good amount of salt in here. Then I'm going to add some of our dried noodles. I went ahead and put this in the oven. Feel free to, if you're going to make this ahead of time, just go ahead and use it cold. These are warm and dry, and these will work very quickly, so I'm going to work pretty fast here. Like I mentioned before, you can, make the noodles and cook them fresh. You just have to be very mindful that it does cook very quickly, and it can turn mushy very quickly. So, I think maybe the thought behind my grandpa's both drying them out is it gives you a little bit more time to stew everything, and you get that nice chew that's still in the noodle, which is what's so amazing about noodle dishes and comforting. And a little bit more. And this is going to soak up pretty much a lot of the sauce. So sometimes I even add more stock or more water, depending on how it looks like. So we had everything cooking for maybe about 10 to 15 minutes. It's gonna cook pretty fast since it is fresh noodles, but I wanna plate everything so that you guys can see just how delicious this dish is. Alright, oh, that looks good. So when researching this dish, there's a lot of places in the Philippines that serve and make Ilocano Mickey, which it's actually very, very soupy. How I remember my papas both cooking it is my gramps, my mom's dad, it was very dry, so it was only like just a light sauce. And then the other ways my other family members have done it is more soupier, so it's kind of a marriage between the two. And because the sauce or the sabaw is a natto base or achiote base, it kind of reminds me of like a chicken version of an egg noodle version of palabok. Okay, so I just have to show you guys some of my favorite toppings. How I grew up eating it was just plain like this, but as I started to experiment with my own, preferences and flavors that I like, my favorite things to do are add a couple of hard-boiled eggs, some green onion, that's really delicious, and then to taste, I have here pre-made fried garlic, that's really tasty, and to serve, a lemon wedge. So all together, it's so delicious. It is like a hug for your stomach. Basically, it's the Ilocano version of chicken and noodles. And I really do hope that you guys all give this recipe a try. It means so much to both the Cardenas and Pesquiza families. It's a labor of love, and thank you so much for having me.